So let me go ahead and say hello to everyone joining us. We're now up to about 35 and counting, so that's great. Thanks for joining us today for the top 5 ways to get buy-in in knowledge management. It's a topic that we've been wanting to do for a while. We do a survey once a year for folks like yourselves to let us know your topics of interest, and that was definitely a high-ranking topic, so we're glad to finally get to that. For those of you who are new to KMI, KM Institute is the home to the Certified Knowledge Manager program. That's the #1 certification in KM worldwide. You can go and find out more information under our classes header up here. We're also known for our specialist certification. That's a deep dive into a specific KM-related topic. You can check that out as well. And we're also known for great free content. And we're active in the webinar space. You can go to the webinar section over here for all the latest activity. We usually point folks to the webinar series page, and this shows what's coming up as well as what's been recently recorded. So do check that out. It's chronological. You can scroll down and see we've got a lot of activity there. And of course, our blogs and articles on KM, so do check that as well. So that is where you can go for additional resources. All right, let me go ahead and stop share, and I'll turn it over to our hosts. We have KMI Instructor and Managing Director of STRATactical LLC, STRATactical International, John Hovell. And we have Dr. Stuart Belle with us for, I believe, the first time. So thank you, Dr. Belle, for joining us. And I'll hand it over to you folks.
Hey, Dr. Belle, how should we start? You want to say hello first, or me, or how should we do
I
this?
think you should go ahead, John, and then I can follow right behind you.
All right, we'll do this, and that's meant to be. I hope you're laughing with us. It's if any of you have ever watched any of those old late night TV shows where they used to do top 5 and top 10 lists, or even like sports stations will do, top 10 best moments of all time. That's how this whole series started, is to, kind of make it fun. And honestly, Stuart and I have separately, just like every top 5 webinar we've done, we've separately pulled together our top 5. I was really just looking at his last night, and I don't know if you noticed, Dr. Belle, it's actually, our lists are relatively close.
Let's see. Let's take a look. I was quite impressed. So this will be fun.
It's meant to be fun. Hopefully you get some laughs with us. And then just like any top 5 list, it's meant to be wrong. It's meant for us to go into breakouts and for you to talk about in small groups, what is your top 5 way? What is your lived experience of how you've got buy-in, or what's your real struggle with getting buy-in? So it's not just Stuart and I, it's hopefully all of us getting a chance to chat about this decades old challenge with KM. How do we get buy-in? So let me see if my screen sharing works. Screen 2. Share, minimize. All right, here we go. Stuart, I think you're up first.
I am first.
What is your number 5 way?
Here we go. Number 5 on the list. Explain. When I jumped into KM, it was the late 1990s, and it was just getting started, right? And one of the first things we had to do was to sort of talk through what is KM. And maybe what it isn't. Maybe we should probably say what is unique about KM in the life of an organization and why it's healthy for an organization. So you want to take some time to really, in non-technical, non-theoretical ways, sort of say, here's what KM is, here's what it does, here's why it's valuable. And I can tell you, basketball and baseball are sports with 2 teams. Great. Baseball, it's got positions. So does basketball. But what's unique about baseball is that it's played outdoors, and in the summer, basketball is actually a winter sport and played indoors. You might not recognize that because it's so seamless, right? But very different realities. And if I tell you that baseball is an event where you can go buy lots of popcorn and hot dogs, that piques your interest. And if I tell you that baseball is America's favorite pastime, that piques your interest. So how you say something about what you want to do is so important. Just very simple terms, generate interest, explaining what KM is. And I'm sure that the explanation of what KM is very different in 2023 than what it was in 1999 or 2000, right? So you want to stay on top of how to talk about what KM is. That's my number 5, John. What's yours?
Let's see. I don't remember. Similar. I like how you wrote in complete sentences. I just did tiny notes here. So very, very similar, I think. I wrote and I cheated a little bit and merged a few things together here. Business case, knowledge management charter, knowledge management strategy, alignment with some purpose, some reason for doing KM. I was working with a client today and we were talking about communities of practice. And I got to admit, we were 30 minutes into a 60-minute call before we got into the conversation about, so what's our purpose for communities of practice? We had 30 minutes of assumptions that, of course, you do communities of practice. Everybody does. You just do them because you're supposed to. And then for the next 30 minutes, we really struggled with, well, is it for collaboration? Is it for breaking down silos? Is it for engagement? Is it for less repeating of mistakes? Like, what are we hoping to get with communities of practice? And that's just one area of knowledge management. So yeah, similar to your explain, I've got purpose or charter or strategy, or I guess alignment is my number 5. Align with some rationale, some purpose, some reason for doing KM. And I'd like to think that would help you get some buy-in if you can speak to your point, clarity around why you're doing KM. How about number 4?
Perfect. And in fact, that's what you need to explain, John. The business case, the strategy, that's what you explain. So great connection there. My number 4 is measure. And a quick hint, there's a built-in code in my top 5. If you pay attention, the first letter of each word is the code for today, right? So next one is measure. You want to be able to cite evidence, and you want to be able to pull to results you can expect from KM. It might be cost savings, right? It might be better employee engagement. It might be better stock market performance. Whatever it is, you want to measure something. You know, a popular scholar said, you know, what gets measured gets managed. And in KM, we can also say what gets measured adds meaning. And so you want to be able to measure the change that's happening. You want to be able to measure the impact. You want to be able to measure the contribution. And so thinking about how you document, how you capture, how you monitor is going to be important. You know, several years ago, I was director for KM at an organization, and you know, given the assignment of building out the organization's first KM strategy. And what we did was we said in very simple terms, when we talk about measurement in KM, is a simple phrase for the organization is, what we seek is what we see. That's it. What we seek to achieve is what we actually see happening. So you want to kind of begin to think about measurement early on and begin to get buy-in for what that will look like. John, what's your number 4?
Thanks. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. Completely by chance. That's what my number 4 is.
Yeah.
Measurement. Now, I snuck in a few other things. So measurement strategy, I even like partnership. So those that have worked with me know I often talk about partnering knowledge management with organization development, partnering knowledge management with project management, partnering knowledge management with change management, partnering knowledge management with my number 4 here. If you're lucky enough to have a monitoring, evaluation, and learning, a MEL, or sometimes MLE, if you have that function or that group or that expertise, that practice inside your organization, huge. Finance, if you have a finance department, which I guess most everybody does, maybe government and military, a little bit different. If you can partner with a measurement group, I think you can start to get, especially in hierarchies, which I assume most all of us are in, there is something exactly what Dr. Belle is talking about. If you can measure it, it tends to get watched and looked at. It actually goes a little bit to our number 5 as well. It's like, what are you shining the bright light on? What are you looking at? And then measuring it potentially gets you a little bit more buy-in. I did put in there metrics. So underneath the measurement strategy are specific key performance indicators, or I know a lot of people now are doing OKRs, objectives and key results. If you can get that tied to your KM program or even your KM project, you might get some buy-in. ROI is return on investment. There are many places that if you can start to prove and start to tell a story around return on investment. And then I snuck in here, it's similar to measurement. It's similar to maturity models. If those work for you to get buy-in, you know, there is the first ever international standard for knowledge management, ISO 30401. You can measure compliance with a maturity model, an internal standard, or an external standard. And especially, again, partnerships with diversity, equity, and inclusion, I've found that D&I gets a lot of buy-in using maturity models. And so ISO 30401 is so new, we're still just beginning to hear about it. But I think there is some potential that you could get buy-in if you brought to your leadership, here's the international standard. Do we want to do this or not? There's literally a shall statement in the standard that says leadership shall commit to knowledge management. And it's literally written in the standard to get buy-in. So that's my number 4. How about if we're moving to the top half, how's your number 3?
Yeah, number 3, a nice segue, John, from your number 4 to my number 3, because mine is align. And you talked about connecting KM to OD, connecting KM to professional development, training, KM to finance. So you want to align across strategic initiatives in the organization. And by the way, the code in my top 5 is a 5-letter word. The last 3 letters are AME. So you kind of want to be thinking, what word might be spelled with blank, blank, AME? We'll get to that in a second. I think the biggest mistake knowledge managers, knowledge strategists, knowledge evangelists make when trying to pitch and generate commitment, right? John, you mentioned that we shall commit to KM, is not themselves being, not ourselves, because it's part of the community, not ourselves being knowledgeable of other initiatives within the organization. We feel a bit detached sometimes, and we sort of fight the lone star battle of KM is good, we got to do it, but we're not connected to other things in the organization, and so we can't run threads among and between what needs to be connected in the organization, and how KM provides that glue and a facilitation role within the organization, right? So you want to kind of begin to align things that are additive and things that are accessible. These days we have social media. The social media is a very hot area, right? How can we leverage social media to enable KM? How do we begin to leverage and work with AI to support KM, right? And people find social media easy to use, and that's why it's taken up so much speed. Social media has lots of buy-in because it's easy, it's accessible, it's intuitive, and so we want to be able to make KM accessible and additive. And so finding the sweet spot, what works with social media, and how do we leverage good practices, tools, approaches, key messages. So aligning with what already works within the organization and just attaching a little bit of KM to that, and the unique contribution that it adds is a good way to get buy-in. So stay aligned to what's happening in the organization. Don't try to fight the battle on your own, but really connect with other strategic initiatives and infuse KM as part of that. So align. John, over to you.
I love it. I think we should do another one of these sometime, Stuart. I'm loving our back and forth.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, I didn't pay attention to your 5-letter acronym, so I'm excited.
Let's see what it is.
I'm trying to guess. I'm guessing it's not blame.
No, but maybe.
All
let's
right.
Find out.
Let me see if I think I lost my mouse. Can I just press the arrow? There we go. Okay. So yes, my number 3, balance quick wins and transformation. So my 3, 2, 1, I'm really kind of going outside. If you went off and Googled how to get buy-in or that kind of stuff, I'm now really number 4 and number 5, very common. You're going to find those anywhere. My 3, 2, 1 are kind of my lived experience of really struggling through getting buy-in. So I've personally had good luck with balancing what I would call quick wins and transformational change. I have talked to many people, and I think I've personally made mistakes inside some of the organizations that I did not last very long inside as an employee. If I tried to change the whole world, KM is here to change culture, to change technology, to change processes. I'll be provocative. We're better than continuous process improvement. We're better than project management. We're better than change. KM's going to take over everything. Anytime I tried to do that, I did not get any buy-in, and I was escorted out pretty quickly. Right? Too much transformation, too much. Look how amazing KM is. And then I don't know that I ever completely lost or left an organization because of this. So maybe there's data there for you too. But the other side is, I think if you don't try to do any kind of transformational change, and can I exaggerate here and say you just run communities of practice, you just run knowledge cafes, you just do webinars, you just do content management and SharePoint and knowledge base articles, right? If there's you're fixing bugs and you're doing little quick wins, that there's, steps towards something, I'm not sure that's enough. I think you might survive 2, 3, 5 years. I think at some point, a new leader is going to come in and say, so what have you done in KM? And you can say, well, I improved the process by 5 seconds and we saved $50. Right? Maybe. So balancing that very tricky balance of some quick wins to keep the energy and to, have like almost individuals or small groups bought in to KM because you delivered something specific for them, and 1 or 2 or 3 quite transformative, not transitional change, a before and after type of change directly related. KM was part of the program that did that. I think you're heading towards deeper levels of buy-in if you can find that delicate, ever-moving balance of quick wins and transformation. Stuart, back to you. Top 2. We're getting close.
We're getting close. Just a quick pause to say that when we think about buy-in, it's not just buy-in among senior executives. It's buy-in across, right? It's the participants. It's the contributors to the KM function within the organization. So number 2 is resource. You want to begin to think about what's involved in getting buy-in and getting KM to really lift off in the organization. I think being honest that there is a cost to KM is a great place to start. Just be honest, just be transparent upfront and say, hey, listen, this is going to cost us, but there's also cost savings associated with KM. So be aware of what the resourcing requirements are. And it's not just about money, right? It's about skills. What kinds of skills are we going to be employing, whether through a hire or adopting or building or training for as we get KM going? So you want to think about your skill set, your abilities, your KPIs and all that good stuff, right? So how do we resource the workforce? How do we resource the enterprise system? How do we resource the lead for KM? Who is that going to be? And I think sometimes you forget to include ourselves in that resource package and saying, yes, this is what I will do, and here's what others will do. Another thing to think about when you are discussing resourcing is time. How much time is this going to take? What's the projected timeline? How much commitment do you need from me each week? This is going to take 5 minutes of your time each week if you just upload a quick reflection note on this system, on SharePoint, on Yammer, on Teams, whatever it is, right? So think about not just money, think about skill set, think about time, think about your own role and the resource that you are to the KM function in the organization, and really sort of make that clear. Because when the question comes back from a senior executive or a partner or a coworker, and they say, well, that sounds great. I'm really interested in that. Let's get it going. What do you want me to do? Where do I start? And you don't have an answer. You just missed an opportunity for someone to get started right away. So think about what's needed. Think about how folks can start doing KM and what that means for their time, what that means for the skill sets that they have and what they can build as they participate, and what that means in terms of cost and cost savings. All right, John, are you ready for number 2?
I'm ready. I'm loving your number 2 because I think for some people, literally the definition of buy-in is resource. Like what they mean by buy-in is, can I get more funding? Can I get more people? Can I get more engagement? So yeah, I love that you're sort of almost like reframing, which I think is then, because I've literally got the word reframe. So yeah, again, just very humble, own personal experience here. So I hope it's helpful to others. The way I've been lucky to get buy-in and fortunate and blessed is really paying attention to everything else going on inside the organization and looking at how did anything else ever in this culture get buy-in? Anything. How did finance become a department? Is it just like an assumption? And of course you do that because you have to have, well then how does KM? Well, of course you have to have KM. Why? Right? It's the startup thing that can be difficult. Or, if you're not thinking about functions, just think about projects or initiatives. How did anything get funding and get a groundswell and get people involved in it? Especially the ones that, of course, are going pretty well, where there is some interest, there's some excitement, there's some discretionary effort. being offered into something else, not KM, and just study it. Talk to people, really get involved in how did this happen? Why are we so focused on this and everybody's so excited about it? Just step back a little bit, sort of watch yourself getting swept into the excitement and come with the curiosity of what created, what were the steps to that. And then, of course, now you've got an even harder thing. How do I take whatever created excitement or buy-in for this other thing? How do I mirror that? How do I copy that into KM? And my guess for you is that second comma, storytelling. Now, we know storytelling is a KM technique and tool and approach anyway, so why not use some KM to earn buy-in for KM? I've got one of my clients right now talking about the KM narrative. That's like our main deliverable right now is what's the narrative? What's the organizational story that we're trying to tell to get buy-in, to get people to engage, to get more resource, to get KM sort of up and running at this relatively large organization. And then I snuck in this last one, reframe as loyalty. This is a little trick that I learned along the way from organization development practitioners to just pay attention to resistance, like reframe not having buy-in as resistance. So as opposed to sort of, dare I say, whining and complaining that you don't have buy-in, we have resistance over here. Come with curiosity. I wonder what that resistance is about. What exactly are they resisting? Knowledge is power, and if I share my knowledge, I'm weaker than you. So I'm resisting losing power. That's interesting. Now we can have a power conversation. I'm not even trying to get buy-in. I'm trying to address the resistance. Or flip resistance to the positive, loyalty. And I have had good luck with this in real life. It's a little bit strange at first, I think I'm willing to admit. If you're not getting buy-in, instead of saying, oh no, I'm not getting buy-in, how do I get it? What are the actions I can take to win everybody over and get buy-in? No, flip it, look the other way and say, what are they being so loyal to? Where are they spending their time? What are their priorities? What are they excited? What are they loyal to? And then see if you find a door from that loyalty to, hey, KM is actually part of that. Or you're being loyal to, I don't know, hoarding your knowledge. Well, I have to make this up on the fly now. By hoarding your knowledge, you're doing a great job of documenting your knowledge. Did you know that you're actually doing KM, at least from a content management point of view? Could we do even more of that hoarding of your knowledge? Yeah, I'm like trying to somehow reframe and tell a story and look at it in a slightly different way where it's less heavy than trying to get this big buy-in, either top down, bottom up, peer-to-peer, whatever kind of buy-in you're trying to get. Maybe there's a reframing, even if it's not loyalty, some other way of looking at it that you could then pull to get people doing the kind of KM stuff you're hoping for. All right, I wish we had a drum roll sound, Stuart. Are we ready? Are you ready for your big number one?
Well, the question is, are you ready? Because you snuck the word in there. Can anybody say what the word is? Does anybody know what it is? All right, it's focus. And if you look at the letters, it spells frame. John just talked about reframing. So let me take a step back and then I'll step back in. So with any kind of organizational system, you want to get buy-in, you want to have a conversation about something, you want to generate commitment. It all comes down to how you frame the issues. It all comes down to how you frame what it is you want to do. So framing is so important. But diving back in, that F then is about focus. And you really want to zoom in on maybe, John's number 3, quick wins. You want to jump into what I said on my number 3, which is aligning to something that's additive and accessible, right? You want to focus on just enough, not too much, right? You lose buy-in, people feel overwhelmed. It feels a lot. It feels heavy when there's too much attached to something you're trying to get buy-in to. You want to be able to focus. Start small, start simple, get to the fundamental things that really matter for the organization and zoom in, address those issues, right? This 80-20 rule, going to be 80% of what you need to tackle, but it's 20% that really matter. So you want to be able to understand what that 20% is, okay? So prioritization is a key process that you're going to have to go through when you're talking about buy-in. So you want to be able to focus, emphasize, understanding what really matters, talk to people, become knowledgeable about practice areas, about, concerns, about what's not working. And as John said, what is working, where there is loyalty, and how can KM further enhance that? So as you focus and as you look at the big picture, it all comes down to how you frame the issues, how you frame the opportunity, how you frame the next steps. That's kind of how you get buy-in. All right, John, another drum roll for your number one. It is.
I love yours. I love your frame, and it's so funny. Like, yeah, reframing and frame.
Yeah.
I snuck everything into my number one. I filled a quarter of a page on my number one. Lead by example, learn the audience, involve the collective, increase in awareness. Here's the words I want to say about this. You know what I find when I, am commiserating at knowledge management conferences, or buy-in is just such a popular thing, like all the time. I don't have buy-in. What I find is it's an us versus them. That's what I find. That's what I'm trying to politely say in my number one. What is going on with your us versus them? Can we have that conversation? Who is the us that loves KM, and who is the them that's resisting or not buying in? I'd love to look at that. I'd love to get more talk about where is the we. What is it that we can, I think a lot of our other words, the framing, the reframing, the storing, the business case, the measurement, I think it's like we're trying to get to the we. So now I'm actually shining a bright light, and I'm not trying to go around and find the we. I'm saying, no. Tell me about us. Tell me about them. Tell me about we. The other thing I would sneak in here is good old change management language. Classic change management is you do change to people. KM is great. Let me do it to you. I'm going to explain to you. I'm going to rationalize how great and brilliant, and you're going to be so much better if you do what I'm telling you to do. I'm going to change to you. What I'm trying to say here, lead by example, learn the audience, involve the collective. I'm trying to say change with people. Maybe you need to meet. Maybe you need to listen more. And people are already trying. People don't wake up in the morning and try to be inefficient or try to not collaborate, I think. So what are they already doing, and how can we pull what they're already willing to do? Amount of time, priority, effort, love for KM, right? Like maybe there's some little area that you can pull on. So lead by example is I just try to do KM and sort of see where it goes, see who comes along and who doesn't. And I know it's maybe a little weak, but it works for me. Learn the audience is my way of saying like personality types, archetypes, right? Like DISC is out there, right? And no personality assessment is great or flawless or anything, but like I'll use DISC quite a bit in the back of my mind. If I meet a person and they want, D is dominant, if they want me to make a point and get in, get out, very quick conversations, then that's how I'm going to try and meet them with their personality. That's how I work with a dominant personality type. I is influence or inspiration. They like long stories. They like long conversations. I'm an I. So I'm going to tell stories and try and inspire an I. That's how I'm going to get their buy-in at an individual level. S stands for steady. Steady likes to talk about their family, likes to talk about outside of work, likes to talk about fun and friends. So I'm going to become a friend. I'm going to get buy-in by being the friendly part of myself. C in DISC, DISC stands for compliant. They like data, they like rules. Stuart and I both had number 4 as measurement. So, right, I'm going to go back to details and data and project plans. And that's how I'm going to win their buy-in is by meeting them in their personality type. So that's what I mean by learn the audience is personality types. Involve the collective, though, is now instead of the individual personality types, I'm looking at the culture of the organization. Do we like to re-energize ourselves quietly by ourselves, reading books and working on detail and data? Then I'm going to have a different type of buy-in strategy. Are we a very gregarious, conversational, storytelling, partying type of organization? Then I'm going to have a very different type of buy-in strategy for that collective culture. And of course, we all know that we are cultures of cultures. So this is why buy-in is so hard. You can maybe get buy-in in this area over here, but you have to do something completely different for buy-in in a different area. So all of that in an effort to sort of raise awareness of what is KM, what are all these partnerships we're trying to have. And I did sneak in some OD speak there. We're a minute past here. Notice your intent and your impact of why are you trying to get buy-in? Really look in your mirror and put some words to that. And then notice, maybe you're getting your impact. Maybe you're getting more buy-in than you think, or maybe you're getting less buy-in. You actually have to ask for feedback to find out how much impact you're having or not. And then I think I've already talked about judgment into curiosity. Okay, so there's our top 5. Now, just like we always do in every top 5, Stuart and I put a lot of time and thought into those top 5. We hope they're helpful. I kind of hope you disagree with some of them. I hope you agree and like some of them so that you can, make it real for your own area. Stuart and I had to make a bunch of assumptions about buy-in. So we've gotten good feedback on this second slide from a lot of the other top 5s, which is like sharing our assumptions about how we got to our top 5 that we just made up from our own experiences. So maybe some of these assumptions are helpful for you. So the 2 big questions are, what do you really mean by buy-in? This is where I struggled, and Stuart, maybe you can offer some thoughts too. Do you mean getting senior leaders to give you money? Is that what you mean by buy-in? Or do you mean nobody comes to my communities of practice and I need buy-in to people to engage? Is it nobody's buying in because there's no reason, there's no time or money to do it? Is it, there should be another bullet point here. Is it because you hear a bunch of negative talk in the hallways about KM and you just want to reduce the negative talk, doubt and skeptic, right? There's like, sort of see if you can unpack buy-in. And I hope, and it's been lucky for me, if you can sort of get into the tentacles of the areas of what you mean by buy-in, I think you can actually come back up to get more buy-in if it's more clear what you mean by it. Like, again, back to the very first one. If you just want funding from senior leaders, then don't call it you don't have buy-in. Say you don't have funding for KM, and then try to get funding for KM and see if that goes in a different direction. Does this spark anything for you, Stuart? Agree, disagree?
It does. Agree completely. I love what you just said. Yeah. Name the issue, right? My number 1, focus on the issue. So correct. If what you need is funding, say I need funding. I think buy-in, the term buy-in can be oversold. And so when we lump everything as buy-in, it can lose its effect. Because when you do really need buy-in, you want to use the word buy-in. I think, yeah, I kind of, you're right. Assumptions, John. I was also thinking, what do I mean by buy-in? Where have I gotten buy-in? Where have I not gotten buy-in in my experience in my career, right? There was a time very quickly when we were thinking about a component of KM being sort of exit interviews, folks leaving the organization, and we're trying to capture what they learned during their time here, how they got to solutions, the challenges they faced, where they weren't happy with the organization, right? It felt like an HR function. It was sitting with me as a KM function, and HR had some serious pushback to the point that they went to the vice president and said, why is Stuart asking employees these questions? And not until HR and I sat down together and we said, here's what you want to achieve, and here's what I want to achieve, and here's how we can do that together, is when things kind of kept rolling. So when you're thinking about buy-in, yeah, is getting people to engage? Is it getting people to participate? Is it getting clarity on some things? But as John said, if you need A, say A, and save the word buy-in. Just a quick tip: save the word buy-in from when you really need to use it and put it out of your back pocket, so to speak. Because being specific helps to generate a response. Buy-in doesn't tend to come when the ask is vague or when it's couched within something else that could mean several things. So be as specific as you can. But we want you to disagree with us in our top 5 if you want to. We welcome that, and that's how we learn. That's how we generate knowledge from this community. All right, John.
I think we can start breakouts.
Yeah.
I'll just mention, in case this goes right with the what does it mean for you, there's just a list, and that list is a quarter of the sort of synonyms or other words. So are you trying to sell KM? Are you trying to promote KM? Are you trying to prove the value of KM? Are you trying to get support for KM? In case that's helpful as I guess, one of the major points from Stuart, the reframing, the being as direct as you can about what does buy-in look like. So yeah, it looks like I can fire up, I think 12 breakout rooms. So we'll have about 4 to 5 people per room, nice small group. And I'm thinking we can do about 12 minutes in the breakouts for you to talk and share your top 5 or any reactions about buy-in to what we've just offered for about 12 minutes. And then we'll come back and we'll try to open up our videos and microphones and chat and have a full group conversation about what's the collective intelligence in this room about how to get buy-in. So here we go. Enjoy. See you back in 12 minutes. Welcome back. 7 seconds and everybody will be back. 3, 2, 1. Let's wait a few seconds for audio and video. All right, welcome back to the full group. Joshua, we were just looking at your question in chat, but let's start with a full group. So we've still got 5, maybe 10 minutes left. Did anybody have any aha moments? Anything to share with the 30 or 40 of us still here? What's our collective intelligence around getting buy-in for KM? Anybody want to share to start us off?
Well, I'll start. My name is Kayla. I was just explaining how, I was hired into this knowledge manager role right under 2 years ago. Lots of org changes. The leadership that hired me into the role, has left the company, and getting that executive level leadership over that department who to believe in a knowledge base has been a challenge, and I think more so a challenge because they do not fully understand the concept of knowledge management. So as my role continues to kind of shift around and focus in on different departments, and now we focus on process documentation, it essentially is still all the same. And so for me, it really is just trying to hear everyone's stories. It makes me feel like I'm not alone. Like we all are having these challenges, which is refreshing. So now when I get done with this, I'll be able to go back to my manager, explain, here are the challenges we're having. So even if we're trying to document this process for one group, we need to understand this larger picture of what are we trying to accomplish when it comes to managing our company knowledge as a whole for our employees. I think for our customers and clients, we do a great job, but we need to focus more on the employee side of that. And because it's such a large company, it can be done so differently. So just sticking to these key pieces that you guys provided, and thank you. It's been wonderful. It just puts my mind at ease and makes me feel like my thought process has been correct, and I am going down the right train of thought. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're not alone. And yeah, instead of getting buy-in for KM, you're getting shared understanding for KM, which is exactly what Stuart and I talked about.
Yes.
Thanks, Kayla. Glenroy, I see your hand. Glenroy?
Yes, sure. So the point I'm making, I came in late, but I just got the gist of the conversation. And the point I want to make here, we in organizations, to optimize our performance, we have to solve the wicked problem. That is how we integrate wisdom, intelligence, knowledge, information, and data, and see it as a whole. There's the fable of the men, about 5 of them, blind men who experience an elephant, but each experience is based on the part of the elephant they were holding on to, right? So what we need to do is to see KM in its totality and its integrated aspects that really gives the value to KM, right? So we can solve the wicked problem, which is wisdom, intelligence, knowledge, information, and data. So I just wanted to make the summary.
I love what he just said. We had an interesting discussion. It was less about buy-in, but the fact that we all do KM and in different parts of the world, and it's like a different part of the elephant in every situation. And so finding out what the company or the organizations that you're working with need, and trying to work from that angle, and not instead of trying to create a KM function, and that's the world that I live in. But it seems like we all kind of do different things. And we talked a little bit about the fact that if you come into a company and where they really need KM is perhaps in an operations team, but you have the skill set and the experience and the something to offer other teams. The only way that I've been able to really do that is to kind of create a kind of a work group to kind of bridge the two teams, and then you kind of ooze into the other areas instead of trying to create a fully funded KM program that everybody has to report to as a shared service like finance. Thank you.
Good question here as I thinking about the conversations that might have happened in the breakout groups. How did you feel about the top 5 that we shared, that John and I shared? Any best practice that anybody can offer where you have gotten buy-in, and what might be maybe a top 3 for you, or the most important thing to pay attention to? We heard some examples already of generating understanding around buy-in, around KM, and Charlotte, you just did an example as well. But anybody else, what might be a top way to generate buy-in or understanding KM?
So this is Uday.
Yes, Uday, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I can add a few points from my end based on my experience on knowledge management. Basically, for the buy-in, what we can do is we can create some kind of a trust on the discussion that we're happening. Okay, and so provide some kind of outline product benefits clearly, right? And give some risk-free trial period for them, at least with the money-back guarantee, right? So that it will create some trustworthy between the human, because we are human beings first, right? Then we make some rapport, okay? Then find the way how we can get some kind of lead kind of thing. That's what I have a thought.
Thanks, Uday. Yeah, you mentioned the word trust. John and I were chatting about that. So important. I heard another voice come online. Who would like to follow Uday?
Yeah, that was me. I'm Jenny.
Yeah.
Yes. Measure. I know that before my company was just acquired by a larger company, but one of the reasons why it was so, I guess, beneficial to acquire is we measured, the knowledge management group was put in charge of the capability maturity model integration, the CMMI level 3 appraisal, and we knocked it out of the park in the way we organized it in our knowledge tools and briefed throughout the assessment. So measurement has been, citing the level 3 maturity rating that we received last October, has been a great way to achieve a certain level of buy-in for the organization. Now, I can say that my larger organization has not, we have to start weaving that KM into the culture, and it's been a lot slow going for the integration of knowledge management in this larger organization that acquired us. But I must say measurement has been key and essential for buy-in.
Nice. Thanks, Jenny. Want to open up for anybody else, and then John, Eric, as you wish, we can wrap up. But one of the things that just popped into my mind as you were speaking, Jenny, is when we do have quick wins, which is, John, is that your number 3 or number 4 pop quiz, right? When we do have quick wins, one of the ways to generate buy-in is to advertise what works, advertise that you do have buy-in, advertise the change that you're seeing. If your workspace is a space that has a culture that allows you to put up billboards or a poster or the placard or something, little reminders. Don't forget to upload your learning point from today. Contribute to this, SharePoint story. We're having a collaborative this afternoon. Advertise, promote, sell, invite. That's kind of how you generate reminders and a very visible engagement with KM that is not on the screen, that is not on a document, right? That is in the hallways, in the lunchroom, at the water cooler, and yeah, advertise. And that's another way to sort of generate what's working and what's needed for KM.
Reminds me, some places have TV screens. You can try Get on the TVs. You said not on screen, although I will admit for me, email signatures, right? I often say
Right. Yep.
if it's a large enough team and a large enough organization, the whole KM team will have their email signature that says something about knowledge management to, get people to click on it or to know about it. Oh, and then
That's
Stan
right.
Garfield. Stan Garfield has his acronym SAFARI. I don't have it memorized, but it's, SAFARI, and it stands for like what your responsibility is for personal knowledge management. It's like sharing, answering questions, responding to questions, asking questions, finding answers for other people, and inquiring. I think I may have just got it. Something, if you look up Safari, Stan Garfield, I wonder if that also, just like taking those actions, doesn't help you lead by example and get buy-in. But Eric, Lori, first of all, Stuart, Dr. Belle, a big thank you to you.
Oh, hey, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. And Eric, Lori, how should we close?
Yeah, I think we're good to go. Thanks for joining us. Lori, thanks for being on as well to help out, and Brandon for recording. And we'll have the edited version of this in just a few days. Usually it's about a 48-hour turnaround. And since you're a registered guest, you'll be the first to know about that recording. And we hope to stay connected. But thanks again for our hosts, John Hovell, Dr. Stuart Belle. Thanks for joining us again today. Hope to do another top 5 with you sometime down the road.
All right. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.
Well done, Stuart.
Thanks, John. All righty.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.